What can be done to protect children uprooted by conflict? It's an urgent problem which needs global attention. Data from the UN's Children Fund, UNICEF, shows that 50 million children around the world have been displaced because of war, violence or poverty. Many are extremely vulnerable, at risk of exploitation and abuse, and the number of unaccompanied child refugees tripled in 2015. Gracie Jerome takes a closer look.
There are nearly 50 million children in the world that are either refugees, migrants or internally displaced.
The number of refugee children has doubled in the last decade. Conflict in countries like Syria, Libya and South Sudan is driving millions from their homes. And many end up in overcrowded and underfunded refugee camps. But Bintu is just one of nearly 50 million children who've been displaced. Children make up a third of the global population, but account for nearly half of the world's refugees. 28 million of them are fleeing conflict, with 45% of them last year coming from Syria and Afghanistan. For many, escaping the conflict doesn't mean they're safe. In Nigeria, children who escaped Boko Haram's insurgency are facing starvation. But it's not all bad news. Many countries are adapting, creating policies that integrate and educate these children.
أنا اسمي مصطفى عمري 14 سنة وجاي من سوريا حاسس حياتي حلوة يعني مبسوط فيها الرفقات عندي ورحت على المدرسة.
UNICEF says the policy of countries like Germany shows the crisis doesn't have to mean a future without hope.
The difference of approach by different governments shows there is room for manoeuvre. You can provide education to children even on the move in refugee or displaced people's situation. You can protect children even in these very dire situations.
But for millions of children without food and education, time is running out. Gracie Jerome, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Geneva is UNICEF spokesperson Sarah Crowe. Sarah, thank you very much for joining us. I don't mean to be facetious, just for the sake of definitions. When we say children, what age group are we talking about? Are we saying sort of 12 and under or 18 and under?
No, it's 18 and under, and that's the international definition of a child under the International Convention of the Rights of the Child. So that is the global definition of a child. And as you've seen, the numbers are growing, and it's clearly an upward trend. And this is as a result of all the global conflicts that we see in the world right now, and has a massive impact on children's lives.
Yes, there's been a massive spike. Child refugee figures have jumped by 75% in 5 years. We have 11 million kids, essentially, refugees or asylum seekers. You say this is due to all the global conflicts. Let's look at which ones in particular. Syria, South Sudan. What else would you add to that?
Afghanistan, Iraq. I've just come back from Greece, and there you can see a very direct impact on what this global migration crisis means for the children who are now stranded in Greece. There are around 27,000 children who have had their lives effectively put into limbo because of the border changes, because of the EU-Turkey agreement, because the Balkan borders closed. One particular case, a family, a little girl whose name is Sarah, funnily enough, her father had gone ahead last year because he was ill. It turned out he has a life-threatening disease. And then her and her family tried to join him. They went not once, not twice, but 3 times they tried to cross the Aegean. And the smugglers put the price up. The second time they nearly drowned. And the third time they arrived in Greece only to find they could no longer go forward. So what we're calling for very clearly in the case of families like Sarah's family is that people's families must be reunited. In the lead up to the twin summits in New York, this is a key ask, that children should be reunited with their family wherever they are, because this is the best way to protect children.
You have a big appeal to host countries to do more to help these child refugees and to make conditions better for them. And one of them, of course, as you mentioned, is reuniting them with their families. How do we solve the riddle of perhaps a country's resources and them not having the right resources in order to do so? Because the German model might be great, but not every country, say I give you maybe Jordan or Lebanon, for example, has the sort of resources that the Germans have in order to make life better for those child refugees.
The key message going forward for the twin summits coming up in New York on the 19th and 20th of September, it's not about putting more burden on the host countries that already have taken in a huge share of refugees. It's simply not fair on those countries to take in more. What needs to happen is there has to be a global responsibility sharing. So all countries need to play their part.
Sarah Crowe joining us from Geneva. Thank you very much for joining us.